Well, the other thing is the concept of the negative emotion outlook, what you said, outweighing reality. Like your boyfriend tells you he loves you every day, but your insecurity causes you to believe that he doesn't. Now the negative emotions have caused you to like not, now you can't even see objective reality. The sea of emotions that you're in are heavier than the physical mass of the objects around you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets to be problematic. The second thing, as you said before, you talked about stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, this concept, my favorite one, modern stoic would be Jocko Willink. He talks about, hey man, you just made an extra $1 million. Good. Hey man, your wife just left you. Good. Hey man, the business is taken off. You won a bunch of awards. Good. Hey man, sorry, you have terminal cancer. Good. No matter what, he faces it the exact same way, because I think the issue is a lot of times what happens is there's this belief, like what you said before, of individuals thinking that because men are not expressing wild and vastly varied emotions all the time, that they're going to somehow crack and break. And it's like, no, if men did that, the society is what would crack and break. It is actually men able to control their emotions that are better leaders, better fathers, better executives. And the men who don't are the ones out there starting fights, acting crazy, cheating, lying, and doing stuff like that. It is being in control of your emotions that allows you to be stoic and allows you to do those kind of things. And I have this conversation with my girlfriend all the time. She's like, it's like, you don't feel anything. I was like, no, I feel exactly what you feel. I just made a choice before this that those feelings do not outweigh objective reality. They don't outweigh the fact that I have employees, I have to be at work at this time, I have to go to the gym. Those things aren't outweighed because of the emotions that I feel in the present moment.
Yeah, you still might feel shitty inside,
yes.
but you do it anyways. You do what you have to do anyways. But there's also this understanding, I think that's really helpful, in that like everything in life is always happening like for you, not to you. I think that's really important to recognize. And it's like the worst thing ever to say to someone when they've just lost a parent or a sibling or you know, a relationship just ended, to say, oh no, this is what's best for you. Look for the silver lining. You'll see.
Yeah.
It's the worst possible advice to give someone at the exact moment that they are experiencing devastation. But at the same time, if we look back at our own lives of all the things that have ever happened to us, I'm 40 years old and 40 years of my life, that has always been true. I can say for a fact that everything that's ever happened to me in my life has shaped me in some positive way. It's always happened for me and not to me. I'm not the victim of this story, right? And so if that has always been true, then it must always continue to be true, which in the moment that something traumatic happens in my life, it creates just enough space for me to recognize that, like, although I might not see it yet, this has always been true, therefore it must be true now. Like, life is always happening for me and not to me. And it just creates just a little bit of space between you and the events for you to recognize that while you may not understand it at this moment, like, you will see. You will see. And it's also a choice to take the lessons from a situation and to not view yourself as a victim.
Yeah, I mean, that's not having a victim mentality. The frame of maintaining that is just so important. Like, the things still happen. Drunk driver ran over my father when I was 2006, and then afterwards I saw her on the stand, at the criminal trial, and I told her on the stand, I forgive you, for what happened, whatever.
That's incredible that you were able to do that. That's beautiful. Wow.
But I told her that, and she's saying, and I told her, I was like, hey, I hope all these things that that happened to you in your life, I hope you get them settled. But I did say, you're probably gonna have to do that from prison. And I understand that. And I hope these things work out for you. And I said, hey, listen, I forgive you, whatever. And it was hard. I was in my uniform. I was a lieutenant in the Air Force. And I remember doing that. And it's just one of these things where I read this, what you resist persists. And I never, when my dad died, resisted the fact that he died. I always accepted the fact that he died, but then chose how to act additionally, if that makes any sense.
It's also
right?
How long do you remain in that state?
Yes.
I think that there's nothing wrong with being sad when a relative dies.
Exactly my point.
Nothing wrong. And like, I think like the conversation around masculinity sometimes is perceived as like creating robots.
Right.
And you didn't just describe to me a person that's a robot.
Yeah.
You didn't describe to me a person that has no emotions. You described to me a person that had enough empathy that they could see themselves in the person up on the stand, that they were able to forgive them. That is not a person that is not in touch with their emotions. That is not a person who is insensitive or lacks empathy or is a robot. That's incredibly difficult and brave and courageous and beautiful and loving, all at the same time. So I think it's just about like not allowing those states to persist. And there's nothing wrong with grieving, and there's nothing wrong with being sad, and there's nothing wrong with being angry, and there's nothing wrong with being depressed. We're not talking about depression, which is a prolonged state.
Yeah.
But in a moment, for a day, for a moment, I mean, we all go on waves of how we feel. but also it's like what you do in those circumstances and recognizing what you need to do and who you need to serve and where you need to step up and still meeting your obligations. But of course, you can be both strong and emotional at the same time. There's no reason you can't be both.
Yeah, I was bringing up the story because of what you just said, with this idea of like, hey, you just lost someone. It's like, hey, look for the silver lining.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is, and I've said this to my friends, I'm like, feel what you feel. Fully go into the thing that you're feeling, but also recognize that your decision to go break things, kick people, cuss at people, or leave really nasty comments on YouTube and TikTok, those decisions, you don't have to do those things because you feel the way that you feel. When you resist the way you feel, you clench up, you get really tight. A lot of times it'll stay longer. You'll stay in that state for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and if you don't allow yourself to feel it, it won't pass through you. It'll stay in your body, and that becomes something that you either have to let go of down the road or that will affect the way you live forever. So yeah, we think there's this like conversation around trauma and bad things that happened in our past. And you hear people all the time use the word processing. It's like, oh, I'm processing that, and it implies that in order for us to overcome the bad things that happened in our life, we must exert some level of effort. I'm figuring it out. I'm mulling it over. I'm trying to make sense of it. I'm taking the lessons. And you're putting this kind of energy, I've just got to
shape it so that I can digest it.
That's the energy you're putting into the thing in this past, and you're trying to process it. But that's actually not how we get past anything in life, and that's not how we become free of behaviors that don't serve us and thoughts that don't serve us and stories that we tell ourselves. The way that we become free of the past is by simply releasing it, letting it go, which is the simplest thing and the hardest thing to do at the same time. It's very simple, not necessarily easy. Right? And we don't even have to make sense of it or have to understand it. We don't have to reach that level of clarity around these events. We can simply choose to let them go.